Hi everyone, thank you very much for allowing me to give you this update on StatsCloud in 2024. My name is Daniel and I'm the founder of StatsCloud, and it's my pleasure to tell you everything we've been up to at StatsCloud for the past year. So this presentation is called our 2024 update. I know that title isn't very exciting, but hopefully the content will make up for that, as we've got some very exciting things to share with you today. I think most people are familiar with StatsCloud now, so I'm not going to bore you with several slides explaining what it is and what it does. I'm just going to bore you with one. In a nutshell then, StatsCloud is an online statistics package that lives in the cloud. It's a progressive web app, meaning it runs on any device. The main app is also completely free to use, so we have no hidden catches, no session limits, no idle timeout limits, and no analysis timeout limits. It's free with unlimited access for everyone on any device at any time. Because of this, it's really easy to get started with. It costs nothing to give it a go, literally. Even if you don't want to dive into StatsCloud fully, you can dip your toe in and maybe just supplement some of your teaching with it until you're ready to migrate over fully. And all of this makes our main unique selling point very easy to communicate. We are the only statistics package that allows unlimited access on any device at any time for free. Now, if that wasn't enticing enough, we do have lots of other unique selling points and features, and this year we've got even more tricks up our sleeves. So up until this year, all the updates for StatsCloud were coming thick and fast, and as the app is very feature-rich already, we've now focused our efforts on 3 big features this year, which I'll talk about in turn. So first of all, we have widgets. I spoke about these last year as something that was upcoming, but I'm happy to say they're now ready, and I can show you some examples of these today. We also have live sharing. Again, this is something I spoke about last year, but this is now live and it's working in the app, so I'll show you how that works too. But the most exciting thing is this, analysis modules. We've been busy building a new feature where you can add your own custom modules for StatsCloud and extend the functionality of the app to suit your needs. We're still building this at the moment, but we're making really good progress with it, and I'll share that with you today. So, widgets. Now, just as a bit of background, this is what our classic interface looks like. You're probably used to seeing this already, but in this classic interface you can see all the tabs on the left that represent the different stages of your project, the data, the variables, the filter, the charts, analyses, and you can use those to navigate around the app one by one. But we thought, wouldn't it be nice if you could see all of this all in one go on one big dashboard? So this is what we came up with. This is our dashboard view. Now, I was raving about this a lot last year, and I'm afraid I still am, because we're very happy with this. This functions almost as an entirely new statistics app, because now you can see your whole project all at once, all on one screen. So as you can see here, we've got the data up in the left corner, our charts and analyses in the middle, and the codebook for our whole project there on the right. Now, this particular view gives you a good overview of your whole project, but the dashboard view is completely customizable, and you can choose what panels you can see on the screen and the background as well. So here's a view that's more centered around charts. This view is more about data entry, so we've made the panels a bit bigger and we have our data on the left and our variables on the right. And another useful thing about this is that we have a help panel as well. So we're building up the documentation for the app gradually, and by having the help panel here on the right, it means you've essentially got a textbook built right into the app, and you can always have that open when you're working on your project. So that's a really nice use for the dashboard view as well. And also, if you are learning to code or you're teaching students how to code, you have all of your main panels on the left there, and then you can see how making live changes in the app affects the code that is written for you on the right. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is because you can think of each of those panels as being a widget. But instead of having lots of these widgets open up on the screen all at once, you can just have one open in a smaller screen like this. So you can see here that we've taken out the widget and turned it into its own standalone app that you can embed into any HTML resource. And that makes it really powerful. Because StatsCloud is a browser-based app that can be rendered in an HTML iframe, you can stick that iframe in lots of places. You can put it in your virtual learning environment or any documentation you have online blogs, even presentation slides, or any other teaching resource like online textbooks. And some people have actually already started doing that. The great thing about this is that it reduces the need for task switching, so you don't need to keep flicking between a physical textbook and a screen that's showing something else, or keep changing windows or tabs. You can integrate the app into your teaching resources, so everything is available all in one place. Now these widgets are fully interactive. You can click on those buttons and use the app as you would normally, and it's worth mentioning too that this is not a stripped down version of the app. It's the entire application crammed into that little widget. We've been really careful about how we designed it to make sure it has exactly the same functionality you get in the full application. Now it's really easy to create a widget, and you can do this now in the app. It's already live. So in your project, all you need to do is click on the share button in the bottom left corner, and when you do, you'll see a pop-up that looks a bit like this. So you can customize what you want the widget to show, as you can see on the options there. And down at the bottom, we can choose what tabs we want displayed at the top, and we can also choose what tab we want to have open by default. We can customize what it looks like as well. You can change the color of it, or you can change it to have a transparent background so you get this glass type effect. So you can see that's what we have on the left there. And this works particularly well if you have a dark or vibrant background like this. Or you could just have a solid fill. And that way, because you can choose the color, you can make it slot in really nicely with your own branding or resources. So those are widgets, and we're very happy with those. Okay, so I'm going to talk about our second big update now, which is sharing. Now, sharing a project in StatsCloud has always been possible right from the start, and sharing has existed in the form of snapshots. So what you do is you generate a link for your project, and it captures a snapshot of what your project looks like at that precise moment in time. So here's an example. We've got the link there at the top to statscloud.app, and you can see that after that question mark, we have a series of query strings, which you've probably seen in other websites before. But basically, everything after that question mark is a set of instructions that StatsCloud reads when it loads up. So basically it says here that we've got some data, 1, 2, 3, and then ABC, some variable names, and a title. And StatsCloud takes all that information when it loads up, and it populates the project with that information ready for you to start. Now that's quite a simple example, and these links can be quite simple, or they can be less simple. But it doesn't matter, because we're not expecting you to know how to write them. StatsCloud generates these URLs for you automatically. So again, if you click on the share button down in the bottom left corner, you'll see a pop-up that looks like this. Now this is actually the same pop-up we saw a moment ago to create widgets. In fact, you can see the widget tab there at the top. But if you want to just generate a link, you can do that here in this window. What you can do is you can choose what gets displayed when users click that link. You can choose whether to hide certain parts of your project, your charts, your analysis, the title, anything you want, and the project will load up with that information when it's shared with somebody else. So that creates a snapshot of your project, and it's designed to be shared publicly with anyone. Obviously, all of the data in that project is being contained in the link, and that makes it very good for sharing with other people quickly and easily. And that's available for free for everybody. Now, there are some limitations to this. Obviously, if you have quite a big data set and you've got, say, 50 analyses, all of that information needs to go into the URL, into the link. But there's a limit to how much we can put in there. The other issue is that you might not want a snapshot. So if you share a link to a project and then you decide to make some changes to that project, that link that you've sent out is now going to be out of date and you'll have to generate a new one. So what you may want instead is a live link. And this is something we've added this year. A live link provides live access to your project. Now, this is a pro feature. It's one of the features included in our subscription model. And if you are running your own instance of StatsCloud at your university, all of your users will be able to generate and share live links with each other privately across your instance. In the future, we'll look into allowing you to share those publicly as well. But the key thing about these links is that there are no limits to how much data can be shared inside them. So here's an example. This is a dataset, and you can see that we've got an ID, a person's first name, their last name, email, gender, age, etc. Lots of information about people. And we have some test scores in that dataset a bit later on. So let's say you want to share a live link. What you do is you click share, and you'll see a share pop up that looks a bit like this. And all you do is click that green button that says Generate New Share, and it will change to this view. And then you can see that you can just copy that link, and you'll get a link that looks a bit like that. Now, when your users follow that link, they'll be taken to your project. And when the project loads on their device, it will show them what that project looks like at that moment. So if you give them that link, then you go back to your project to make some changes. So for instance, you add a new chart or run a new analysis. They can then refresh the page and get the latest version of your project. So that's quite nice. There's another really powerful thing about the sharing feature too, and it's something I'm really proud of. I've never seen other statistics apps do this, but it's a really important feature. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you would have spotted that there's also an option to define your columns. Now, this particular dataset gives us a good example because it's quite sensitive. We've got people's first names, last names, and we don't want to share that with other people. We, as a researcher, will want to keep that information because it's going to be useful to us in identifying people, but when we share this project with other people, we don't want them to know this information. So, what you can do here is generate a share link that excludes certain columns. So, for instance here, we're creating an anonymous dataset that excludes the first name, the last name, and the email. When we click the green button again, it generates a new link to a project, and if people follow that link, it will open up the same project, but with those columns missing. Now, that's a really powerful feature, and there's a big use case for this, particularly in research. There are researchers who, for instance, have a dataset with sensitive information like this, and they then have to save a separate copy of it to share with other people, and that's just hard work. But you don't have to do that now. You can just have one copy of your project, keep it in one place, and just generate a separate share link of that project with only the columns you want people to see. Now, the way this works, just in case you're interested, is that the project is stored on a secure server, and when people access that link, the server knows exactly what to give them, and it just won't download the data for any columns that aren't included in that particular share. So it's a very secure way of storing data, sharing only the information you want, and keeping the rest private. This also has some applications in teaching. So maybe, for instance, you have a project that has some answers in, and you want to create a version of the project that doesn't have those answers in. So a project that's missing some columns or some charts or analysis, for instance. What you could do then is generate two links, a share link with the version with the answers in, and another with them missing, without you, as a lecturer or teacher, having to create two separate versions. So that's another really good use case for live share links. Now, I should apologise at this stage if my enthusiasm for StatsCloud is getting a bit overbearing. I'm afraid it's about to get worse, because this is a feature I'm most excited about, even more than the dashboard view. So, brace yourself for this. Modules. Well, what are modules? Basically, we want to give you the opportunity to extend the functionality of StatsCloud yourself. Now, we've done our best to have as many analyses in the app as possible, and the ones that are there should cater to the average undergraduate statistics module, but we do understand there are sometimes some additional analyses that you would like StatsCloud to do, but aren't currently available yet. So that's what modules are for. They are additional custom-made functions that extend the functionality of the app. You could think of them as plugins or add-ons, and they allow you to create the exact functions in the app that you would like to see. So, if there's an analysis you can't yet do in the app, you can now create your own. Now, I'll be honest, this is a feature I've wanted to have in the app right from the start, but the technology hasn't existed until quite recently. So, some of you will be aware of WebR, and WebR is a new package, a JavaScript package, that allows you to run R code in a browser. Now, historically, R has been a bit of a nightmare to get working on some devices, and it just isn't possible to run on some modern devices, like tablets and smartphones. But it is now possible to get R working inside a browser window, and because we make a browser-based statistics package, we were all over this. So we made no hesitation in creating an R terminal inside the app. We've had a Python console for a while, but now we've got an R console as well. And here it is. So here we are in the code tab, and the user, it's just me, you can see that I've imported a dataset, applied a filter, and I've started making a bunch of charts as well. Now, it's worth mentioning again that I haven't written any of this code. StatsCloud has done all of that for me. As I've been using the app, as I've imported data, created this filter, and made some charts in the user interface, behind the scenes, StatsCloud has populated this console with all the code I need to replicate it in R. Now, what we used to say to people at this stage was that if you want to do something a bit more advanced with your project, you can now copy the code, download it, and open it up in R. But you don't need to do that now. Now we have this very enticing Open Terminal button down at the bottom. So when you click on this, it opens up an R terminal with all the code there, and you just click this green button and R fires into life. It downloads all the packages it needs and then does everything we've asked it to. So for instance here, we've asked it to generate 3 plots for us, and we can save those plots by clicking that button, and you can see above that we've got the results of an analysis at the end of the console too. Now that's really exciting because it now means we have the might of R inside StatsCloud. We don't need to go outside StatsCloud now. We can do a bunch of things that we could never do before. So you can go into the console and do something the app can't do yet. So you could run a multivariate or a man-over analysis. You can do that very easily now. You can just load up a package and in just a few lines of code, run that function and get the results right inside StatsCloud. Now the only issue with this, of course, is that if you're running an R analysis in lots of projects, you have to go into this terminal each time and type the same code to get the results you want, and that's going to get annoying. So what we wanted to do is capture this power of R and place them into analysis modules. So that's basically what a module is. It's a custom function that you can write in R. Specifically, it's a function that accepts certain parameters that the user interface passes into it, and then outputs data in a nice user-friendly interface. So here is a very simple function that you can run in R. If you've used R before, this might look familiar to you. This is the function that's used to run a simple correlation. Now, this particular function is quite simple. We've got 3 parameters here, an X variable, which is a vector of numbers, a Y variable, which is another vector of numbers, and we also have a method, which in this case can take one of 3 different values depending on the type of correlation you want to run. So the idea is that you ask your users what parameters you insert into that function through the user interface, and then once the function has run with those values, the results get displayed in a nice user interface. It sounds a bit complicated, but it's really, really simple. And the key thing about these analysis modules is that we want to make it really, really easy for you to write them. Historically, when you write add-ins or plug-in modules for software, usually you have to install some third-party software, learn how to write them, sift through pages and pages of documentation, but you don't need to do anything like that here. Writing a module for StatsCloud is really intuitive, and you can do it right inside the app. And I'm going to show you how. So this is the interface we're working on at the moment to create a custom analysis module. So let's say here I want to create a custom module that runs a correlation. What I do in this screen is I enter some basic information about it here. So I'll just give it a name. I'll give it a brief description. I can also give it an icon and then give some tags as well. Now this can be quite useful if you have a lot of these custom analyses written and you want to be able to identify them easily. You can think of them as search terms that people type in to find your analysis quickly. And on the variables tab, I want to ask users what variables they want to go into this function. So what are the variables? We have predictors and outcomes as a default, but you can change these to be anything you want them to be. So for a correlation, it makes sense that we have an X variable and a Y variable. So here we ask users to pick an X variable and to pick a Y variable. We can give them some instructions for each and tell them exactly what data it is we want them to choose. And we can also define how many variables they need to pick for each one. And we might want to define some other options as well. So because this is a correlation, we need to know what method they'd like to use to run that correlation. So we can call that method, and we can put it in the various options we want to give them to choose. So in this case, we want the Pearson, Spearman, and Kendall. And we might also want to have an alpha level as well, so we can type in alpha here and give it a default value of 0.05. And that's basically our function set up. So now, if we click on the Code tab, what we can see is that StatsCloud has already made a good start on writing this function for us. It tells us exactly what the function is going to look like and what parameters it's going to accept. Then, as you scroll down, it gives you instructions for what you need to write in that function to provide the output the user interface needs. So here's one I've written already. It's pretty straightforward. If you're not a programmer, then sorry, this might not mean much to you, but if you are, you can see this is actually quite simple. We're defining our data. we're running the same test, the core.test function I showed you a minute ago, and we're inserting our x data and y data into that and putting in the method as well. You can see too that I've created my own table here, which is basically just a list of values that I've got from the results object. I could also create a plot, and I've also created a summary, which is just a couple of sentences in English, and I have a bit of logic there that tells the user what the results show, and it's generated based on the results found. And once I've done that, I can put all of that in one overall results object, and then the user interface can read that object and display each part of it nicely in the user interface. Okay, so now we have the analysis module written, you'll see that it looks something a bit like this. We can see that it appears in our analysis tab as an analysis we can select, and you may recognize this information. This is the information we typed in a moment ago when we set it up, the title, the description, the tags, for instance. And when users want to run this analysis, they can just click on the Run Analysis button. When they do, they'll see a screen that looks like this. So again, the terms and the descriptions here might look familiar to you. This is what we typed in when we set up our variables. And it asks them to pick their X variable, and it asks them to pick their Y variable. So it's really quite simple. Once they have, and they've clicked to run the analysis, the results will get shown to them in our nice user interface like this. So what you're looking at here are the results of the R function we've just written wrapped up in our nice StatsCloud user interface. We can see the plot we generated here, and we can see the results of the table we created below it as well. Now the nice thing about this table is that when it's displayed in the interface like this, we get the same tools as we do in any other table for StatsCloud. So we can copy it, paste it into a word processor, download it, etc. Now up at the top you'll see that users also have the option to rerun the test with some new parameters. If you recall, we set up a method and an alpha level, and you can see that those are available to change in the options at the top. So when the user changes those, the test will rerun automatically and the new results will get displayed in this window. So this is a really powerful tool of getting a simple function in R and showing the results in a nice user-friendly way. So as you can imagine, this is something we're really excited about, but we want to go even further than this. When you run some of the analysis in StatsCloud currently, you may notice there are lots of other things we could add to them. So for instance, we have a reliability section with a little flag to signify how reliable that analysis is. We show information on whether a better test is available, and some analysis will even generate new columns of data for you and give you the option to write those back to your dataset. And we want these analysis modules to have all of that functionality. So hopefully you can see why I'm so excited about this. It gives us the best of both worlds, the power of R with the nice user interface of StatsCloud. The other exciting thing about this is that we want to create a hub for modules created by the community. We want StatsCloud to be a community-driven project, so we're going to encourage statisticians to write their own modules and put them in a public repository so that other people can use them. And of course, the enticing thing about this is that it's very easy for people to do that. In a lot of cases, it will just be a case of taking an existing R script and modifying some parts of it so they fit with the format needed for StatsCloud. So eventually, we want to put those in a global repository that users will be able to browse and download so they can customize the app and get all the functions they need in the app ready for them to use. So that's really exciting. Okay, now since you're here, I'll take this opportunity to give you a few extra updates we have for you too. First of all, accessibility. Now, since I gave the last talk, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines have been updated to version 2.2, and there are some new features that websites and web apps now need to comply to, and I'm happy to say that we have met all of them. So our accessibility statement reflects this, and if you don't believe me or you just want to see for yourself, you could check out our accessibility statement there at about.statscloud.app/accessibility. So as I've said before, accessibility is something we take really seriously, so I'm really pleased we're now able to reach these new standards. So something else we'd like to do is be even more transparent about the code behind the app and make more of the code open source. Now, having analysis modules would be a big step towards that, because when you see a custom module, you'll be able to preview the code and see exactly why StatsCloud is giving you the results you see in the interface. I'd also like to open source our documentation too, which is available at help.statscloud.app, and ideally we would put all of that in another global repository and invite the community to view this, make edits, and even add whole new articles to it. So we want to make the documentation a nice global, community-driven effort as well. The big new feature I'm planning for the future is another tab, a Reports tab. So what we want in the app is a rich text editor that allows you to write up a report of your project in your own words and allow you to add in elements from different parts of your project. So for instance, you could write a paragraph of text and then maybe insert a chart that's been generated from the Charts tab, then maybe another paragraph of text, and then another element from the StatsCloud user interface, such as a table. So you can build up a report based on elements that have been created from different parts of your project. And of course, this would all be dynamic. So as you make changes to your project, the charts, the tables, all the elements you've included in your report will be updated to reflect that. And we'll also allow you to export these into a variety of different formats. So HTML, PDF, perhaps even LaTeX documents as well. But most importantly, Quarto files. Now, if you haven't heard of Quarto, it's well worth looking into. Quarto files are basically more advanced and versatile R Markdown files, which means they're very powerful to work with, and we're looking forward to generating those. So this should hopefully arrive sometime in 2025. Okay, well, now I've got you excited about StatsCloud, let's talk about how you can start using it at your university. Now, hopefully by now you can see the virtues of switching over to StatsCloud. The app is getting more and more popular now, and I'm happy to say that since my talk last year, our user base has roughly doubled. I'm hoping that trend will continue. I see no reason why it wouldn't, so it's very exciting to see that we have a very, very fast-growing statistics package, and we'd like you to be part of that. Now, one of the reservations people may have about StatsCloud right now is that it isn't yet a recognised industry standard statistics package. Some people may ask, do we really want to teach students a software package that might not be recognised in a job they go into afterwards? That's a very fair point. Firstly though, I think it's worth mentioning that it's very difficult now to name one statistics package as an industry standard, simply because there are so many of them. If we're being honest, the only real standard, the gold standard in running statistics, is using a programming language like R or Python. And teaching students to write and perform stats in these programming languages is the most ideal situation. Now, some universities I know have taken the brave step of trying to teach programming to their undergraduate students, but with some limited success. I know some universities have tried this and it hasn't quite worked out, so they're now back to using their old statistics package again. So the landscape at the moment is that we have an awful lot of statistics apps out there, and they don't necessarily lead people towards becoming programmers. And in fact, they might even distract people from learning a programming language, which is a shame, because we shouldn't give up on teaching students how to code. Realistically, there's nothing any point-and-click software can do to compete with running stats in a programming language. So with StatsCloud, we're not trying to. Instead, we've designed an app to be a very clear stepping stone to learning how to use a programming language, and I don't think any other statistics app is doing as much as we are to help prepare people to become programmers. I really think that StatsCloud gives students the best introduction possible to learning how to code. And this is why. So here we are back on the dashboard view. So here's a user typing in some data, actually it's just me again, and you can see that as I'm typing in data, the code to reproduce this in R is being populated for me on the right. So as a user is typing in data, they're getting live information on how they do the same thing in R. They can rename variables, as you can see here, and something they might want to do as well, for instance, is hide a variable, in which case it imports the dplyr library and generates the code to do this at the bottom. Now we can do the same in Julia and in Python as well, and of course like with R, we have a live Python terminal, so at any point they can just open up that terminal, run the code, and see the output in Python right before their very eyes. Now, honestly, I genuinely cannot think of a better way of teaching people how to code than this. Here we have a live interactive tool that shows them how to write code and gives them the chance to check it and see exactly what it outputs. No other statistics app is doing as much as we are here to help people learn how to code. So again, that's something we're really, really happy with. So if you don't want to give up on teaching your students how to code, but you don't want to jump straight into using a programming language, this could be a great way of getting them started. So if I've convinced you to get up and running with StatsCloud, the best way to do so is to visit statscloud.app. Now this is our demo version, but it allows you to do almost anything. It's free and it's always available on any device at any time, so you can be guaranteed that your students will always be able to access it, whatever device they have. Now that alone is a good reason to use it, because I don't think any other statistics package offers that. Now, of course, you don't have to dive in. You might just want to introduce it to students gradually, and maybe just use it for the first year, or for one assignment, or even just as a tool to demonstrate a chart or an analysis. And then you can work your way up to using it a bit more. However, I should warn you though that once your students start using StatsCloud, there's a good chance they might not want to use anything else afterwards. Now, the demo version, as I said, is a free version. We do allow you to do lots in the app for free, but there are a few additional features you can get out of the app with a pro account, which you can see on this comparison table here. Now, the first thing I want to stress here is that even with the free version, the app is always available. There are no limits, no session limits, no idle limits, no analysis timeouts. We want it to be available to everyone, anytime, regardless of what device they have. There are some additional pro features in the pro version of the app though. So the main one is that you can save multiple projects in the cloud, you can save and sync your preferences too, and you can have your own variables library as well. Now that's very useful if you find yourself using the same variables over and over again in multiple projects, like a personality questionnaire for example. You could just pull those variables out of your library and import them into a fresh project in one simple step. So that's a nice feature. As I mentioned earlier, we also want to give you the ability to save your analysis modules in the cloud when these become available. Now, you can still create analysis modules in the free version, you just won't be able to share them with others. So if you'd like the ability to do that, the pro version is the way to go there. So there are actually two ways you can get your students up and running with a pro account. The first is that they can each sign up for their own individual pro account by visiting about.statscloud.app/pro, or just following the links to sign up on the login page. But a better solution would be to host your own instance of StatsCloud at your university and give all of your students pro accounts. So here are the benefits of running your own instance of StatsCloud. First of all, you can host it off or on premises. We can host it for you on a secure server, but it's usually better for everyone if you host it yourself on premises, if you have the ability to do that. If you do, we can give you all the files you need to host the app, including all the front end and all the back end files. When you do, you can access your instance through an administrator's dashboard. So you can add your own users, you can impersonate users, and crucially, you can customize the app to your own needs. So if there's a function that StatsCloud has that you don't need or you don't want your students to have access to, you can just switch it off. When the analysis modules are ready too, you can populate your instance with your own custom modules so all of your users will see the same analyses in their dashboards. Sharing projects between users, we talked about that earlier, and you can also choose when to update. So when we update the app, we try not to change the interface too often or that dramatically. I know it's really annoying when you prepare teacher materials for a product and the interface completely changes by the time you come to teach it. So we give you the option to update it when you want. Of course, if you're using the free demo version, we do update this sporadically, so really we can't really predict when it's going to change. But if you host it yourself, you can just stay on one version until you're ready to upgrade. So with users, here is a breakdown of all the features you have when you run your own instance of StatsCloud. Now, you can think of students as basic users, lecturers or teachers would be moderators, and technicians would be admins. So students have basic abilities like saving their projects, and the one thing moderators can do that students can't is that they can impersonate student accounts. For instance, they can type in a user's name and then browse and use the app as if they are them, which is very useful. Admins can set up the app for the whole instance and add and edit users as well. So here are some screenshots of what you would see as an admin. Now on the left you can see there's the ability to add users, and you can enter their name, email, and set a password for them. That password could be the same password they use to log into any other online product you happen to offer. But of course, users also have the opportunity to set their own passwords once they've logged in too. And on the right, we have a flavor of some of the options you can turn off or on in the app. So if you as an admin turn off any of these options, it affects all the users on that instance. So you have full control over what all of your students see. So if this does sound like something you'd be interested in, please do get in touch, and you can complete the form at about.statscloud.app/products or scan the QR code. And if you complete that form, we'll get back to you shortly and have a discussion with you about getting started. Now, finally, I just want to address other software vendors here. I know there is some fantastic software out there already, for instance, around experiment building, making questionnaires, etc. And this is just an invitation if you would like to work together and integrate StatsCloud into your product. Now, basically, what I'm suggesting here is that if in your software you have a button that looks like this, why not have one that looks like this? So if you generate a data file for your users and you require them to download it and then open it up in another statistics package, you can remove that step entirely by having that data file opening up in a version of StatsCloud embedded into your app. Now, this should add a lot more functionality to your software. If your users have collected data with you, your software can now analyze that data using StatsCloud. And if you host your own instance of StatsCloud, you have access to our full suite of APIs, including the ability to generate new projects, create your own analysis modules, and you also have access to our user APIs as well, so you can add this to your login flow. When students log into your platform, they can also log into your instance of StatsCloud as well. So you can create a very seamless integration between your product and StatsCloud. So there are lots of exciting things to share with you today, and there's still a lot more to come in the future. For now, I'll just leave you with these contact details. Of course, if you think your department could make use of StatsCloud in any capacity, please do let us know. We'd love to speak to you and your colleagues more about using StatsCloud and how it might benefit you. You can get in touch with us at the email address there, or you could just fill out the quick form by following that link or scanning the QR code. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much again for listening, and I hope you'll be making even more use of StatsCloud now.